What happens when Charlize Theron walks onto a live talk show expecting a friendly conversation, only to find herself in the middle of one of the most uncomfortable debates the panel has seen all season? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. Whoopi Goldberg smiled as the audience applauded. Please welcome Academy Award winner Charlize Theron. The crowd erupted as Charlize walked onto the stage, waving before taking her seat at the table. Whoopi nodded. It's good to have you here. Charlize smiled. Thank you. It's good to be here. Joy Behar jumped in immediately. Every time you're here, you've got another project, another cause, another thing you're working on. I don't know how you find time. The audience laughed. Charlize shrugged. I honestly don't know either. Sunny Hostin smiled. Well, that's what happens when you're talented. Charlize laughed. I'll take that. The first few minutes were easy. They discussed Charlize's latest film, her work as a producer, and some of the advocacy projects she had been supporting. The audience seemed relaxed. The hosts were smiling. Everything felt like a typical celebrity interview. Then Sunny shifted the conversation. You've always been outspoken about social issues. Charlize nodded. I try to be. Sunny leaned forward. And sometimes that comes with criticism. It definitely does. Do you ever worry that celebrities are becoming too political? The audience made a soft collective sound. Not because the question was shocking, but because everyone knew where conversations like this often went. Charlize answered carefully. I think everybody has a right to express opinions. Sunny nodded. Sure, but some people feel actors and entertainers shouldn't influence political discussions. Charlize smiled politely. I hear that argument a lot. And what do you think? I think people can listen or not listen. Nobody's forcing anyone to agree. The audience applauded. Sunny waited. Then she asked another question. But do celebrities sometimes overestimate their influence? The room became quieter. Charlize took a second. I don't know if it's about influence. What is it about? It's about using whatever platform you have responsibly. Sunny tilted her head. But who decides what's responsible? The audience reacted immediately. A few murmurs. A few claps. Joy looked over. Whoopi watched carefully. Charlize remained calm. That's a fair question. Sunny nodded. I'm asking because people often disagree about what responsibility means. Charlize smiled. They absolutely do. So where's the line? Charlize crossed her arms comfortably. I think the line is being informed. Sunny responded quickly. But everybody thinks they're informed. The audience laughed. Charlize laughed too. That's true. Sunny smiled. So if everyone believes they're informed, why should people trust celebrity opinions any more than anyone else's? Charlize answered almost immediately. They shouldn't. The audience applauded. Sunny paused. The answer clearly wasn't what she expected. Charlize continued. I don't think anyone should automatically trust my opinion because I'm an actor. Sunny looked surprised. Really? Of course. Then why share it publicly? Because I'm a citizen. The audience applauded louder. Whoopi nodded slightly. Charlize continued. I vote. I pay taxes. I raise children. I live in the same world everybody else does. Sunny jumped back in. But some would say your platform gives you disproportionate influence. It probably does. And that's not concerning? Charlize looked directly at Sunny. It would be concerning if I told people not to think for themselves. The audience applauded again. Sunny smiled but didn't back down. I'm not disagreeing entirely. Charlize nodded. I know. I'm just wondering whether celebrities sometimes unintentionally shut down disagreement. Charlize thought for a moment. That's possible. Sunny looked encouraged. So you agree? I agree that anyone can shut down disagreement. Sunny raised an eyebrow. Anyone. Politicians. Journalists. Celebrities. Social media users. The audience clapped. Joy suddenly jumped in. Can we agree social media is making everyone angry? The audience burst into laughter. Charlize pointed at Joy. That might be the safest thing said today. More laughter. For a moment the tension eased. Then Sunny returned to the topic. But here's what interests me. Charlize nodded. Sunny continued. You've built a reputation for speaking confidently about issues. I try to speak thoughtfully. Fair enough. Sunny leaned closer. Do you ever think public figures receive praise for saying things that ordinary people would be criticized for? The audience reacted immediately. Several people nodded. Others looked uncertain. Charlize sat back. That's actually an interesting question. Sunny smiled. Thank you. Charlize continued. I think public figures are praised sometimes. And criticized. And criticized. The audience laughed. Sunny smiled. But seriously. Charlize nodded. I think visibility magnifies everything. Sunny waited. Charlize continued. When a public figure says something people like, the praise becomes louder. And when they say something people don't like, the criticism becomes louder too. Whoopi nodded. That's definitely true. Sunny looked unconvinced. But doesn't that create an imbalance? Charlize asked calmly. What kind of imbalance? Sunny answered. An imbalance where certain voices dominate conversations. The audience grew quiet again. The discussion was becoming more serious. Charlize took a breath. I understand that concern. Sunny nodded. But I think the bigger issue is whether people have access to different perspectives. Sunny looked directly at her. So you don't think celebrity culture affects public discourse negatively? Charlize smiled. I think celebrity culture can affect everything negatively if we're not careful. The audience laughed. Even Sunny laughed. That's probably true. Whoopi jumped in. I think we've all seen examples of that. The audience applauded. But Sunny wasn't finished. There was something she clearly wanted to explore. She turned back toward Charlize. Can I ask one more thing? Of course. Sunny paused. The room became noticeably quieter. Do you think people sometimes confuse popularity with credibility? A few audience members gasped softly. Joy immediately looked toward Sunny. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. Charlize's smile faded slightly. Not from anger. From concentration. It was obvious she understood exactly what Sunny was asking. And for the first time since the interview began, the audience could sense real tension building at the table. Charlize adjusted in her chair, looked directly at Sunny, and prepared to answer. Sunny smiled as the applause settled. Then let's go there. Charlize nodded. Sure. Sunny leaned forward. Just because someone has a platform doesn't necessarily mean they have expertise. That's a criticism we hear all the time. Charlize listened carefully. I understand that criticism. So when celebrities speak on major social issues, political issues, cultural issues, why should audiences listen? Charlize answered immediately. They shouldn't listen because someone is famous. The audience reacted with a few surprised murmurs. Sunny nodded. Interesting. They should listen because the argument makes sense. A wave of applause followed. Charlize continued. If what I'm saying has merit, evaluate it on merit. Sunny responded. But that's not always how influence works. No. So isn't there a danger that fame itself gives opinions more weight than they deserve? Charlize paused. That danger exists everywhere. The audience became quiet. It exists with politicians. A few audience members applauded. It exists with television personalities. The audience reacted. It exists with social media influencers. More applause followed. And it exists with actors. Sunny nodded. So you acknowledge that? Of course. Sunny crossed her arms. Then why do so many celebrities seem comfortable stepping into conversations where they may not be experts? Charlize smiled slightly. Because expertise isn't the only qualification for having an opinion. The audience applauded loudly. Sunny tilted her head. But opinions can shape public thinking. Yes. And sometimes public policy. Yes. Sunny waited. Charlize continued. That doesn't mean people should stay silent. The audience applauded again. She looked around the table. I've never understood the idea that someone should only speak if they're the world's leading expert. Whoopi nodded. Exactly. Charlize continued. By that standard, most people would never speak. The audience laughed and applauded. Sunny smiled. That's not exactly what I'm saying. I know. Charlize smiled back. But I think sometimes we create impossible standards for certain people. Joy jumped in. Especially celebrities. The audience laughed. Charlize nodded. Exactly. Sunny looked thoughtful. Maybe because celebrities often seek attention when promoting projects, but then object when people question their opinions. The audience reacted immediately. A few cheers. A few gasps. Charlize sat back. Questioning opinions is healthy. Sunny raised her eyebrows. It is. Absolutely. The audience listened closely. I don't want people agreeing with me because they like my movies. Applause followed. I'd rather people challenge ideas. Sunny nodded. Then let's challenge one. The audience immediately became attentive. Charlize smiled. Okay. Sunny took a breath. Do you think Hollywood sometimes lives in a bubble? The crowd reacted loudly. Some applause. Some laughter. Even Joy smiled. Whoopi shook her head. Oh boy. Charlize laughed. I knew that question was coming. Sunny smiled. Well, Charlize nodded. Yes. The audience erupted. Sunny looked genuinely surprised. You do? Of course. More applause followed. Sunny laughed. That was a faster answer than I expected. Charlize shrugged. Every industry has a bubble. The audience nodded. Politics has won. Applause. Media has won. More applause. Finance has won. The audience clapped again. And Hollywood definitely has won. Sunny smiled. Then how can Hollywood accurately understand what ordinary Americans think? Charlize responded calmly. The same way everyone else does. How? By listening. The audience applauded. Sunny replied. But are they listening? Charlize paused. Some are. And some aren't. Absolutely. The audience reacted. Sunny nodded. So when people say Hollywood is disconnected, you understand where they're coming from. Sometimes. The audience listened carefully. Charlize continued. But I also think that phrase gets used too broadly. Sunny asked. What do you mean? Sometimes people say Hollywood is disconnected, when what they really mean is Hollywood disagrees with me. The audience reacted immediately. Several people applauded. Others murmured. Sunny smiled. That's fair. Charlize continued. Disagreement isn't the same thing as disconnection. The applause grew louder. Whoopi pointed toward Charlize. That's an important distinction. Sunny acknowledged it with a nod. But surely there are times when criticism is justified. Absolutely. Charlize didn't hesitate. Every institution should be criticized. The audience applauded. Every powerful industry. More applause. Every public figure. Even more applause. Sunny smiled. That includes actors? Especially actors. The crowd laughed. Sunny laughed too. I wasn't expecting that answer. Charlize grinned. I know. The audience laughed again. Then Sunny shifted the conversation. One thing I've always found interesting about public discussions is that people often divide everything into sides. Charlize nodded. That's true. You're either with us or against us. Exactly. Sunny continued. And social media has made that even worse. The audience applauded. Charlize agreed. I think social media rewards certainty. The audience became quieter. And life is rarely that certain. More applause followed. Sunny nodded. That's probably true. Charlize continued. People are afraid to say, I don't know. The audience listened closely. They're afraid to admit complexity. Sunny smiled. Because complexity doesn't trend. The audience laughed loudly. Charlize pointed at Sunny. That's actually a great way to put it. The applause continued. For a moment the tension eased. But Sunny wasn't finished. She turned serious again. Let me ask something that might be uncomfortable. The audience reacted immediately. Charlize smiled. We've already crossed that bridge. Laughter filled the studio. Sunny laughed. Fair enough. Then she asked her next question. Do you think people in entertainment sometimes dismiss viewpoints they don't like too quickly? The room fell quiet. Charlize thought carefully. Yes. The audience seemed surprised again. Sunny nodded. You do? Sure. Sunny looked intrigued. Explain. Charlize folded her hands. I think everyone does that. The audience listened. Not just entertainment. She continued. We all have blind spots. The applause began again. We all have assumptions. More applause. And we all have moments where we stop listening. Sunny nodded slowly. That's probably true. Charlize continued. The danger comes when you think you're incapable of doing it. The audience applauded loudly. Sunny sat back. Interesting. Charlize looked around the table. The moment somebody believes only the other side has biases, they've stopped learning. The crowd responded with some of the loudest applause of the segment. Even Joy nodded. Whoopi smiled. That's a conversation right there. Sunny glanced toward the audience. Then back at Charlize. But if that's true, shouldn't public figures spend less time speaking and more time listening? Charlize smiled. Sometimes. Sunny raised her eyebrows. Sometimes. Yes. The audience laughed. Sunny laughed too. Charlize continued. Listening matters. The audience nodded. But silence isn't automatically wisdom. A strong wave of applause followed. Sunny paused. Charlize leaned forward. And speaking isn't automatically arrogance. The applause grew even louder. Several audience members stood briefly. Sunny smiled but didn't immediately respond. The exchange had clearly landed with the audience. For the first time all segment, Sunny appeared to take a longer pause before asking another question. When she finally spoke, her tone was calmer. "Can I challenge that one more time?" Charlize nodded immediately. "Of course." Sunny smiled. "Because I think this is where a lot of viewers would disagree." The audience became silent. Everyone sensed the discussion was moving into its most intense territory yet. Sunny looked directly at Charlize. "What happens when someone with a massive platform says something wrong?" The room instantly grew tense. A few audience members gasped. Others leaned forward in their seats. Charlize's expression became serious. Whoopi glanced between them. Joy quietly adjusted in her chair. The audience fell completely silent. It was clear the conversation had just reached an entirely different level, and the toughest questions of the day were still waiting to be answered. The audience remained silent as Sunny's question hung in the air. "What happens when someone with a massive platform says something wrong?" Charlize nodded slowly. "That's a fair question." Sunny waited. Charlize continued. "The first thing that should happen is accountability." The audience listened carefully. If somebody gets something wrong, they should be willing to acknowledge it. A few audience members applauded. Sunny nodded. "So you believe public figures should apologize when necessary?" "Absolutely." The applause grew louder. Charlize continued. "But I think we've created a culture where people sometimes confuse being wrong with being evil." The room reacted immediately. A mixture of applause and murmurs spread across the audience. Sunny tilted her head. "That's an important distinction." "I think it is." Charlize remained calm. "Human beings make mistakes." The audience listened. "They miss facts. They misunderstand situations. They say things poorly." More nods appeared throughout the crowd. Sunny responded. "But some mistakes cause real harm." "Yes." Charlize didn't hesitate. "And those situations deserve serious attention." The audience applauded. She continued. "But I also think we need room for people to learn." More applause followed. Whoopi jumped in. "Otherwise nobody grows." The audience cheered. Charlize nodded. "Exactly." Sunny folded her hands. "But some viewers would say influential people get too many second chances." The audience reacted immediately. Charlize thought for a moment. "Maybe some do." A few surprised murmurs spread through the room. Sunny raised an eyebrow. "Maybe." Charlize nodded. "Sure." The audience became quiet again. There are absolutely situations where powerful people avoid consequences. Several audience members applauded. "But I don't think that's true in every case." Sunny listened carefully. Charlize continued. "I think we're losing the ability to judge situations individually." The audience responded with applause. "Everything becomes absolute." Sunny nodded. "Meaning?" "Meaning people want simple answers." The audience listened. "Good person." She raised one finger. "Bad person." A second finger. "Right." Another finger. "Wrong." The audience remained silent. But real life usually isn't that simple. A strong wave of applause followed. Sunny leaned forward. "So you're saying nuance matters?" "I'm saying nuance is reality." The audience applauded even louder. Joy smiled. "That's not a popular answer these days." Laughter spread across the studio. Charlize laughed. "I know." The audience laughed with her. Sunny smiled. "Let me push back." "Please do." The audience reacted with anticipation. Sunny continued. "Sometimes people use nuance as an excuse." The room immediately grew quieter. Charlize nodded. "That's true." Sunny seemed surprised by how quickly she agreed. "It is." "Absolutely." The audience listened closely. Charlize continued. "Nuance should never become a way to avoid responsibility." The crowd applauded. "If somebody causes harm, that's real." More applause. "If somebody behaves badly, that's real." The audience nodded. "But understanding why something happened isn't the same thing as excusing it." A loud burst of applause followed. Sunny smiled. "Okay." For the first time, both women appeared completely engaged in the discussion rather than debating each other. Then Sunny shifted directions again. "I want to ask about something else." Charlize nodded. "Go ahead." Sunny glanced toward the audience. "A lot of people feel exhausted by constant conflict." The audience applauded immediately. "Every conversation becomes a fight." More applause. "Every disagreement becomes personal." Charlize nodded. "I agree." Sunny continued. "So why do you think we're struggling to talk to each other?" The room became quiet. Charlize thought carefully before answering. I think we're spending too much time trying to win. The audience erupted in applause. Sunny nodded. Interesting. Charlize continued. Every discussion becomes a competition. More applause. Every disagreement becomes a scorecard. The audience listened closely. And once winning becomes the goal, understanding disappears. A loud wave of applause filled the studio. Whoopi smiled. I felt that one. The audience laughed. Sunny smiled too. That's a strong point. Charlize nodded. I think most people want the same basic things. The audience became quieter. They want safety. A few nods. They want opportunity. More nods. They want dignity. The applause started again. They want their families to do well. The applause grew stronger. Sunny listened carefully. So why does everything feel so divided? Charlize answered. Because the loudest voices usually aren't the majority. The audience erupted. Some people stood to applaud. Others cheered. Sunny looked toward the crowd. That's getting a reaction. Charlize smiled. I think most people are more reasonable than the internet would have us believe. The audience laughed and applauded. Joy pointed toward Charlize. That's probably true. Sunny nodded. But conflict gets attention. Exactly. The audience applauded again. Charlize continued. If two people have a calm discussion, nobody clips it. Laughter filled the studio. If two people start yelling, suddenly it's everywhere. The audience laughed even harder. Sunny laughed too. You're not wrong. Then Sunny became serious once more. Can I ask a personal question? Charlize smiled. That depends. The audience laughed. Sunny laughed. Fair enough. Then she continued. You've spent years in the public eye. Yes. You've been praised. Definitely. You've been criticized. Charlize nodded. A lot. The audience laughed. Sunny smiled. How do you handle that? The room became quieter. Charlize thought carefully. You learn pretty quickly that you can't control public opinion. The audience listened. If people like you today, that's great. A few laughs. If they don't like you tomorrow, that can happen too. More laughter. Sunny nodded. So you stopped chasing approval? Charlize smiled. You try. The audience laughed again. She continued. But that's easier said than done. The room grew quieter. I think every person wants to be understood. A few audience members nodded. That's human. The audience listened closely. But eventually you realize not everyone is going to understand you. The room remained silent. And that's okay. The audience erupted into applause. Sunny looked thoughtful. That's a difficult lesson. It is. Charlize nodded. But it's also freeing. The applause continued. Then Sunny asked the question that seemed to catch even the audience off guard. Do you think we're becoming less tolerant of disagreement? The room instantly became quiet. Whoopi glanced at Sunny. Joy sat forward. Several audience members exchanged looks. Charlize took a long pause. The silence itself created tension. Finally she answered. Yes. The audience reacted immediately. Some applauded. Others remained quiet. Sunny nodded. You do. I do. The room listened closely. Charlize continued. I think we've reached a point where disagreement is often interpreted as disrespect. The applause began again. And those aren't always the same thing. More applause followed. Sunny listened without interrupting. Charlize continued. You can disagree with somebody and still value them. The audience applauded loudly. You can challenge ideas without attacking people. The applause grew even stronger. And you can respect someone without agreeing with everything they believe. Now the audience was fully engaged. Some stood briefly to applaud. Whoopi smiled. Joy nodded. Even Sunny appeared reflective. Then Sunny looked directly at Charlize. That's easy to say. The audience immediately quieted. Charlize smiled slightly. Sunny continued. But what happens when the disagreement involves something deeply personal? The room became tense again. A few audience members leaned forward. Whoopi's expression changed. Joy stopped smiling. Sunny continued. What happens when people believe fundamental values are at stake? The audience fell completely silent. Charlize looked thoughtful. For the first time during the entire discussion, she didn't answer immediately. The pause itself seemed to capture everyone's attention. It was clear the conversation had reached its most sensitive point yet, and whatever came next would likely become the defining moment of the entire interview. For a moment, nobody spoke. Sunny's question lingered in the air. What happens when people believe fundamental values are at stake? The audience sat quietly. Charlize looked thoughtful before finally answering. I think that's exactly when respectful conversation becomes most important. The room remained silent. Sunny listened closely. Charlize continued. Because if we can only talk to people when we already agree, then we're not really communicating. The audience erupted into applause. She waited for the reaction to settle. The real test is whether we can listen when the stakes feel personal. More applause followed. Sunny nodded. But that's difficult. Of course it is. Charlize smiled. If it were easy, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The audience laughed. Whoopi laughed too. That's true. Charlize continued. I understand why people become emotional. The audience listened carefully. Values matter. A few audience members applauded. Beliefs matter. More applause. Identity matters. The room remained engaged. But I don't think anger automatically creates understanding. The audience responded with another round of applause. Sunny folded her hands. So what does? Charlize answered immediately. Curiosity. The audience grew quiet again. She continued, asking questions. A few nods appeared throughout the crowd. Actually listening to answers. More applause. And accepting that intelligent people can reach different conclusions. The audience applauded loudly. Sunny sat back. That's probably one of the hardest things for people to accept. Charlize nodded. I think it is. The conversation had noticeably changed. The earlier tension was still there, but it had become more reflective than confrontational. Joy jumped in. You know what's interesting? The audience looked toward her. We started this conversation talking about Hollywood. The crowd laughed. And somehow we ended up talking about everybody. More laughter and applause followed. Charlize laughed. That tends to happen. Whoopi smiled. Because most of these issues aren't really about Hollywood. The audience applauded. They're about people. The applause grew louder. Sunny nodded. I agree with that. For the first time all segment, there seemed to be complete agreement around the table. Then Sunny turned toward Charlize one final time. I have to say something. Charlize smiled. Okay. Sunny laughed. When this conversation started, I thought we might disagree more than we actually did. The audience laughed. Charlize grinned. Maybe we did disagree. The crowd laughed again. Sunny pointed toward her. That's fair. The audience applauded. Charlize continued. But disagreement doesn't have to become hostility. A loud wave of applause swept through the studio. Whoopi immediately pointed toward Charlize. That right there. The audience cheered. Sunny nodded. I think that's a message people need right now. The applause continued. As the segment began winding down, the atmosphere in the studio felt completely different from where it had started. The tension had never exploded into shouting. Nobody stormed off stage. Nobody lost their temper. Instead, viewers had watched two strong personalities challenge each other without turning the discussion into a personal fight. Whoopi smiled toward the audience. That's what good conversations are supposed to look like. The crowd erupted into applause. Charlize thanked the hosts. Sunny thanked Charlize for being willing to engage with difficult questions. The audience rose to its feet for a standing ovation as the segment came to an end. The cameras captured Charlize waving to the crowd while the hosts exchanged final comments before the commercial break. But the discussion didn't end there. Within minutes, clips from the interview began appearing across social media. Some viewers praised Charlize for staying calm under pressure. Others applauded Sunny for asking difficult questions that many people wanted answered. One viral comment read, "This is what debate should look like. No yelling. No insults. Just two people talking." Another viewer posted, Charlize made strong points, but Sunny asked exactly the questions the audience was thinking. Others focused on specific moments from the conversation. The clip where Charlize said, "Disagreement doesn't have to become hostility," quickly gained traction online. Thousands of viewers shared it across multiple platforms. Comment sections filled with reactions. Some agreed with Charlize's emphasis on nuance and listening. Others sided more with Sunny's concerns about influence and accountability. But one thing nearly everyone seemed to agree on was that the conversation felt refreshingly genuine. Media commentators discussed the segment throughout the day. Several noted that viewers rarely get to see long-form discussions where neither side is trying to score points or create a viral confrontation. What stood out wasn't a dramatic argument. It was the fact that both women remained engaged even when the questions became uncomfortable. Later reports suggested that after the show ended, Charlize spent additional time speaking with audience members backstage and thanking production staff before leaving the studio. Several audience members who attended the taping later posted online that the atmosphere in the room felt respectful throughout the discussion, even during the most tense moments. The hosts also referenced the interview during later segments, acknowledging the strong viewer response and the wide range of opinions it generated. By the end of the week, the conversation remained one of the show's most discussed interviews. Not because someone had been humiliated, not because somebody had lost their temper, but because viewers saw something that often feels rare in modern television. A difficult conversation where both sides stayed present, challenged each other, and kept talking. And in many ways, that became the biggest takeaway from the entire exchange. As the final credits rolled and the online discussion continued, viewers were left debating the same questions raised during the interview. How should public figures use their influence? How should society handle disagreement? And can people with different perspectives still find common ground? Those questions continued long after the cameras stopped rolling. What do you think about Charlize Theron's responses and Sunny Hostin's questions? Did either side make a stronger argument? Or did both bring valuable perspectives to the discussion? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.